Good morning. My name is Bill Reeks, and thank you for joining us today. I lead a company called the Gramercy Institute, and we are a think tank for senior marketers at major financial firms. Now, of course, when we're dealing with marketers at financial firms, the agency world is a real important component to what we talk about and to the industry itself. We have formulated a series of panel discussions that we call Agency Brilliance. And this shines a spotlight on what we consider to be some of the strongest financial services agencies in our industry, in financial services marketing. And we organize them into panel discussions. Today, we're going to talk about content marketing in financial services, and particularly from the agency point of view. So we have a number of agency leaders who are all experts in financial services and all experts in content marketing, here to share with us some of the best practices as they see them in financial services marketing today as it relates to content marketing. So that's what we're here to talk about. And it's a pleasure to have not only our panelists here, but to have our audience here as well. And I do thank everybody for joining us. Now, what I would like to do is I'll mention our panelists, and then I'll get right into it. But panelists, before you answer your first question, I will ask you to please tell us about yourself and your agency and anything else you care to share. So first, I'm just going to tell our audience who all is here with us. We have Lynda Koster, we have Kate Whitenight, Anthony Nygren, Eamonn Conway, and Shane Stiles, and of course myself. That being said, let's get into it, right? Oh, audience, I did want to tell you, if you have questions along the way, please go to the Q&A, Q&A, yeah, please go to the Q&A toggle down below, and you can ask a question, and it might take me a couple minutes to get to you, but it would be my pleasure to respond to any questions that I can. We are going to take this on for about an hour is our plan. So let's begin, if I may. And first, Lynda Koster, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself, and then I'm going to get into your first question, if I may, and tell us about yourself and your agency and anything else you care to share.
Sure. So I'm Lynda Koster, co-founder and managing partner at Growthential. My company works as strategic partners with clients, really focused on delivering short-term results and also keeping an eye, looking around corners to drive long-term growth. So background is agency side. I call myself an agency baby, starting out as an intern at a database company, then continued on the agency side, and then also on the enterprise side. So really work to solve for some of the clients' needs and having a view into all and becoming really a more ambidextrous marketer.
Well, it is terrific to have you and the point of view of Growthential here with us today. Let me start with my first question. Could you tell me what, in your opinion, what is it that the consumers of financial content really want from their content today?
Well, I think they're looking for different media types across multiple channels. They're looking for different types of, not only different types of client content, but different lengths. So sometimes they need a quick hit, depending on where they're at in their day. Or when they really need more research, then you think about longer content and articles. And relevancy, I think relevancy and then recommendations for how they could do their jobs better or what will work for them, but something that's actionable.
Thank you very much. And so, I mean, basically what you're saying, you need different lengths and different types across multiple platforms. Because it needs to be what they want when they want it. Is that what I'm understanding?
Exactly, in different mediums.
Yeah, yeah. And the notion, you mentioned relevancy, and just dig down a little bit into that a little bit more. What do you mean when you say relevancy?
Well, if I'm thinking about marketing clients, marketers want to know really what's going to help them in their job specifically, their specific sectors, their specific pain points. So as long as you're really speaking to them individually, based on the businesses that they're in, that's relevancy to me.
Yeah, Yeah. Lynda, thanks so much. I'm going to scoot on to you, Shane, if I may. Shane from Gate 39 Media. Shane, I'm going to ask you to first introduce yourself to us, just like Lynda did, and tell us a little bit more about your agency. And then I'm going to get on to your questions, which will be similar to Lynda's.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. I'm Shane Stiles. I'm the president of Gate 39 Media. We are a digital consulting agency in downtown Chicago, where the weather is perfect today. We specialize in, of course, digital marketing, but we also have a large development team. So we build portals, apps, large custom systems in the space, and a CRM practice, and then a cloud practice. And our ideal clients tend to be where we cross paths across the different aspects of the projects. And then one additional, maybe unique thing is because we're in downtown Chicago, we, of course, specialize in commodities. So we have a lot of that going on here.
Shane, thanks so much for that introduction. I'm going to ask you the same line of questioning that I started with Lynda. And feel free to echo anything she said or add to it, or certainly if you may wish to disagree. But I'm looking for what it is that you feel that financial content consumers, readers, viewers, et cetera, are looking for in their content today.
Well, as always, Lynda hit it right on the head, right? Like those are all key points. But I would add to that, in the way that it's delivered, I think consumers of content, they want to be stimulated. I used to say they want to be educated. Now they want to be stimulated. So it's almost like an entertainment factor has to be built into it. And part of the stimulation, I think, is personalization. And so, having more of the executives on the write the content, be in the videos, in their voice, and so slightly less formal and more personal. And that leads to, of course, stimulus being like, hey, this is someone I want to follow. I like their voice. I like what they are saying. And you have to be relevant and you want to provide value. But again, it resonates better when it's coming directly from a person. And also that's going to be a differentiator from all the AI generated content out there right now, of course.
I loved your response, and thank you, Shane. Let me ask you, because you're mentioning like sort of that you used to say education, now you say stimulus. I'm interested in change. Has this changed lately? That it's become a little bit more personal, a little bit more open collar, a little bit more, let me talk directly to you, and maybe you can address that aspect of your response.
Yeah, I don't want to get down the rabbit hole when we talk about executives suddenly going onto social media platforms and thinking that they're bigger than they are. And, right. But it's certainly making waves, right? And I think you've got really big, I'm not going to call them big personalities, but when Jamie Dimon, right, says something, everyone is going, oh, and he's not overly out there, but there's just enough of him to make the followers of Chase and the customers go, okay, there's an opinion happening here. So bring that down to maybe it's a product manager, maybe it's the portfolio manager, maybe it's those kinds of mid to upper level executives and not just the president, putting their actual opinion as opposed to some of the dry reporting that used to be really, really the de facto type of content for so long.
Yeah. Shane, thanks so much for your response on this. Eamonn, I will move to you if I may, and I'll begin though before we get into the question. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your agency. Anything else you care to share?
Yeah, well, I'm Eamonn Conway. I founded Fiducial Communications. We're a creative agency based in London, so we do a lot of creative content. Our clients are mainly asset managers, multinational asset managers, private banks, private wealth managers. So we've got, we work quite across a large range of geographies as well. About 60% of our income is outside the UK. And I actually lived in the US for 14 years. Actually, my background is television. I worked at CBS Television in Boston. So basically, I've been trying to sort of set up this agency about 10 years ago now to really bring a creative approach to financial content, which I found was just fascinating. You know, I worked at Fidelity Investments for a while, and I just found the fund managers there just had such great stories, and they were just told in such a boring way. It was, you know, 30-minute de facto talking heads back then, and it was just. But, you know, these guys are on the 40-yard line of capitalism. They've got great stories. You know, they just need to get it out in an entertaining and an exciting way. So that's what we try and do.
Yeah, yeah. Eamonn, thank you very much for that. So I want to build on something that Shane just mentioned about it becoming more personal. And I want to first ask you is do you agree that the method through which or by which content is delivered, it has become in financial, has become more personal and less stiff than it perhaps once had been?
Well, look, I think the personal also means relevant, you know, and I think actually FN here in London did a study last year and found that asset managers were spending about 30% of their marketing budgets on content, and 90% of that was being ignored. Now, that's a huge percentage of stuff that's just not getting anywhere. So I think a lot of you know, some of the points that, you know, it's just you need stuff that's opinionated, I think, as you mentioned, Shane. It's got to have an opinion. This can't be, it's too sanitized by compliance. You can't be afraid to get out there. There's too much focus on, you know, topics rather than generalities and stuff that, you know, and people want to be informed rather than sold products that's wrapped up in some piece of content, you know. So, you know, people want to know stock stories. They want to know why you sold a stock, you know, why are you moving into commodities as opposed to, you know, other asset classes, and, you know, what are the stories behind there? Because people want to get inside people's heads. So that's really, they want to see the personalities of the people talking. And, you know, if you could just crack open the head and see what their thought process is, that makes great content, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. And Eamonn, thank you for that very much. Let me scoot over to you, Kate, if I may. And I'm going to ask you, of course, to please introduce yourself and tell us about Merge. But then I want to get into a slightly different question with you, if I may.
That sounds great. Yeah, thanks so much, Bill. I'm Kate Whitenight. I lead the financial services practice here at Merge. And Merge is really purpose-built to combine marketing, technology, and experience design to connect brands with customers, whether that's B2B, B2B, B2C, or B2B2C. We do focus in highly regulated industries, and our approach is really to draw upon data, insight, and omni-channel strategy to personalize your brand's expression and really optimize your customer's experience. And I'm really excited for today's conversation about how content marketing can be central to the design of those high quality end-to-end customer experiences. So thanks, Bill, for having me.
Of course, and thank you, Kate, very much. Before I actually pivot, like I promised, I do have one other element of a question that I want to ask that's more relevant to the question I just asked. And that is what, you know, what consumers of financial content want. Did anything change in over COVID? Because we all started communicating with each other in a different manner. And I guess my question is going to be more general then. Did that change anything in terms of what financial content consumers want and respond to?
You know, I think what COVID opened up was a real proliferation in the types of content and the channels that content was going out in. And so what we have always found in our research is that financial professionals want different types of content depending on their roles, depending on their channel, right? But what they really want is for us to be respectful of their time. And COVID really allowed us to be more respectful of their time by providing them with a clear, concise, differentiated point of view in the channel, in the format that they want to receive that content.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. And now I am going to pivot, and I want to talk about the other side of this equation, right? We've been talking about what it is that consumers want, and that's certainly central to what we need to think about. But I also want to talk about the other side of the equation. What is it that marketers want from content marketing? And from a marketer or agency point of view, what makes great content marketing?
Honestly, marketers kind of want the same thing, right? We want to hit the right audience with the right message at the right time to drive that action. And so as marketers, the key to really activating that engagement, really driving that growth lies at the intersection of storytelling and technology.
Mm.
It's, are we having that deep audience understanding through research? Are we carefully selecting the right technology to ensure that we're really delivering that personalized message at the right time?
I love the passion in which you talk about that. That's the same exact thing. I do want to ask you some more on the technical side. What about results? How much of an issue, and maybe it's not at all, but is it proving that what you're doing is doing what you just said you're doing?
Yeah, I think that that's a real challenge. And in my mind, that's a real area of opportunity as marketers and agencies continue to work together. As the content that we're putting out becomes more fragmented, the way in which we are proving out that value becomes more challenging as well. And so from our perspective, it really sits in kind of having those upfront conversations, open conversations, and really clearly defining what it is that is important to measure, what it is that might be a nice to have, and really ensuring that we're tracking, stopping, and learning before we go back into the next cycle.
Yeah. Go ahead. Who's that?
Well, I think, Bill,
Yeah.
you could have rephrased your question. What do marketers' bosses want? You know, and I think they want the content to be talked about. You know, and they want conversations that'll go around and help, you know, ring the bell. And sometimes it's, you know, we found it's a surprising little piece of content that can actually make a big difference. I mean, we did a video for one client of ours, and it was a bit of a pitch, but it actually resulted, because they went that extra step with that. It won, you know, they won a €100 million mandate on that.
Yeah.
So that's real, sort of, people can see that coming in, and that, you know, that makes a difference, you know. But obviously with financial services content, there's such inertia between the time you can actually see something make a difference. Yeah, but
yeah. Eamonn, thank you so much for bringing that up. That is another like big part of this that we never really played with 10 years ago, with is this viral nature of content and where it can go.
Well, I heard an old direct marketer saying, you know, he said, content really is just what we used to call copy, without asking for a sale at the end, you know?
Right. But you know what's fun though is that there is another element. Well, you know, there is this dream out there that it'll take on a life of its own, right? And far beyond what you had intended. And I think this is what Kate had alluded to, is that you know, that this possibly could be, if we make it intriguing and relevant and interesting and personal, all the things that you guys have already mentioned, there is a chance that it can go far beyond in an exponential way in distribution through viral pickups and whatnot. I'll use a personal anecdote. Is my daughter posted something about a movie that she saw, and it got like 1.2 million likes or impressions. But my point is it can just happen out of anywhere, and of course that's not a bad goal to chase as well. Kate, thank you very much for answering both sides, and Eamonn, thank you for that anecdote as well. Let me get on to introduce Anthony. Anthony, I'll ask you kindly to introduce yourself, and please tell us a little bit more about EMI strategic marketing, and then I have a question for you.
Sure. Thanks for having me on this panel, Bill. It's always a pleasure to join you and the wonderful guests, the other guests that you have on. I am the investments practice leader at EMI Strategic Marketing. EMI has been around for over 30 years. We are a marketing agency that thinks like a consulting firm, in that we believe deeply in that the idea that you have to understand your client's business and the industry in which they operate in order to be as effective as possible for them. And by effective, I mean be efficient in terms of not needing hand-holding to understand who they are, what they do, what the industry dynamics are, as well as the idea of delivering results and building strategies and programs that that touch on those points, those pain points that are going to differentiate your client and make a difference and have an impact on sales at the end of the day. the work that we do spans digital, social, human channels, human in the sense of really working on sales enablement, so all the way through to the point of sale. But all of it is focused on that idea of delivering results. And you brought that up in your question to Kate, Bill, and that's, my answer to that question was going to be marketers should want results, maximum results with minimum investment. So yeah, but I do actually, before you ask the question of me, just to add on a little bit to the idea of virality, I read somewhere once that you can't plan for something to go viral. Mm-hmm. And I think as much as it's something that I think all of us probably love to see, I think it's dangerous to try hard to create something that's going to be viral, because especially these days, people have a pretty strong radar for inauthenticity and trying too hard.
That's a fascinating point, because that's sort of what I'm trying to get to in terms of what are we trying to do here. And if you try too hard, if you try to set up your content that this is going to be crazy, people are going to love it, it becomes inauthentic, and you're trying too much to play to the audience than you are really delivering value. And I think your point is, when the virality happens, it happens and it's great, but don't play to that. Play to the strategy of the content and the content distribution. And I believe that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think at least in the industries that we work in, which tend to be more on the B2B side, across investments, banking, insurance, the reality is that you're creating content that to the normal person does not seem all that exciting. You want to make it as exciting and engaging as possible, but at the same time, there's a limit to what you can do. And so a lot of it comes back to that idea of relevance and timeliness. And if you hit with the right thing at the right time with the right person, that combination can kind of organically produce something that has some legs.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you. Let me maybe go off on a little tangent here. I want to ask you about now, all right, so that all makes total sense to me, what we've collectively answered on these two sort of question areas. But I also want to ask, this is, you're all agencies, right? And you all have clients. And I'm going to ask you, I'll start with you, Anthony. Do your clients understand, that necessarily the results don't, flow in from content marketing the way they might wish to? And what kind of expectation management has to take place with you and your clients when you're talking to them about dedication to a content marketing platform, and let's sort of tweak it as we go, but we won't have results immediately?
Yeah, I guess I'd say that the number one thing for me and for us as a firm is to really get the clients to think when it comes to content marketing, to think in terms of, what is the purpose of this piece of content? What is it that you want it to achieve? Is it generating leads? Is it nurturing your existing clients? Is it sort of cross-selling, getting them to think differently? Is it something you want your salespeople to send out to prospects or customers that they're talking to? Because that is going to, if you can identify that leads to greater focus and enables you to create something that's going to be more effective, and at the same time enables you to be more clear collectively between us and our clients on how to measure results. Because if you're creating something that the primary purpose of which is generating leads, you're not necessarily going to care that much about how many impressions does it get or how many website visits did it drive. What you care about is, how many leads did this thing get? That's what's important. And so that's really a big focus for us. And it kind of comes back to that idea of understanding our client's business and advising them on, look, here are the gaps in your strategy. Here are the gaps that you need to fill. and here are some ideas for content that we think could help you do that.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you so much for those multiple responses. Lynda, I'm going to shoot back to you, if I may. All right, now listen, we've talked about what I call both sides of the equations. We've talked about what makes great content from a content consumer point of view in financial. And then we talked about what the marketer, what marketers really want out of this. I'm going to ask you a very, open question. So how's it going? Meaning, how are we delivering on this? And is there room for improvement that you see in terms of giving the financial media, content consumer what they want and the marketer what they want? And that's my big picture question.
So I want to build on something that Anthony was saying about the measurements and taking a look at everything in terms of what's performing. So I think the other thing to add to that is making sure that when you're looking at, we were talking about pieces of content, there's also the big picture in terms of what you're trying to achieve tactically with the objectives of a piece of content, but then how that ladders up. So how does that ladder up to the overall goal? What he was talking about, lead generation, 100%. But how does that also ladder up to the business goals? So if we start at a high level with the business strategy and what the business is trying to achieve, and then take a look at the channels and then the tactics, but then continually refine that based on learnings, right? So if you take a bigger view, I think you'll be able to put your business cases together for your leadership. You'll be able to actually not only tie results from a tactical perspective, but then broaden that to really understand how that's laddering up.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and then the additional part is how is it all working together? Could start with content pieces. How does that work within the tactic itself? Broadening that just a step up, and how does that actually work with the campaign that you're probably working with? How does that work together across multiple channels? And if you're using multimedia, so just taking a look at refining every one of them, but then also taking a look at the big picture. I look at one of the things we talk about is competitive immunity. If you're not showing up, you're going to have a hard time really protecting your positioning of the firm, making sure there's synergy in terms of how it's all working together, how it's being amplified. The other part is if we're thinking about the digital sphere, is that algorithmic favorability. There are different best practices based on the platforms in the digital space that you're in. So there's another layer of consideration for how you're actually distributing it. And then obviously the efficiency and scale. So that was just build on what was saying, but also to answer your question of how's it going. I think it depends on the firm. Some companies are further along than others, depending on resourcing or perhaps really understanding the role of marketing or the benefits that this could achieve. But that's when you really have to kind of champion it with and sometimes educate internally what marketing is and what it can do beyond promotions and beyond tactics, and really how you can actually help develop that business growth strategy. So I think, again, it just depends on where the firms are at. You have bigger firms that have big budgets that actually can support it or understand the full value. So if you are a startup or a mid-sized company versus an enterprise, those things are different. You might have a 1 to 2 to 3 person team, or you might have an entire content team that's able to support that. So if you're looking at the things like Goldman Sachs as an example, they clearly have the budget. They have, if you go to their insights area, they have put together quite a content strategy, obviously. But then when you're in that space and potentially competing in that same realm, but you're a smaller company, then you've really just kind of got to think of things some more in a different way, I guess, to solve for that.
Lynda, thank you so much. It's a great response to the question, and I appreciate it. Let me stay on this thread. I'll scoot to you, Kate, if I may. And again, like the big question, how are we doing, right? Maybe another way to look at this might be, what more do we need to make this more effective, more efficient? Or maybe another way to ask this is like, where's the future of content marketing heading, right? Like what more are we going to be able to see moving forward that will improve on the way we do things now? So I let you answer in any way you like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I agree with Lynda that there's absolutely a spectrum of maturity that we see across various firms and institutions. I think the three areas that are especially ripe in today's kind of environment for continued optimization are the activation of data to target and personalize messages, and that consideration of the omni-channel experience. Number two, we touched upon, which is analytics. How are we tracking those results? How are we proving out that value, especially in an omni-channel world? And then number three is really the development of processes to kind of help support the timely production and distribution of content, because there is so much opportunity in that space right now as well.
Yeah. Kate, thank you. Great answer to that. Shane, I'm going to ask you along the same lines, please. What could we be doing better in content marketing, either for the benefit of the viewer/reader or for the benefit of the marketer?
I think when it comes to content, a lot of firms, as Anthony mentioned, you have to define what is the purpose of this content, right? And in institutional financial marketing in particular, everything is brand building, right? And if I was to even go further backwards, I'd say it's brand building, right? It's just, hey, here's our quarterly report, and this is what it is, right? And that's where what used to be corporate communications should now really just be, okay, there's corporate communications, and then there's marketing content, and then this content is brand building content. And then to go even further, many large funds and institutional marketers are not, I can't tell you how many times when I go, okay, what's the purpose? And if I bring up demand generation or lead generation, they go, no. We don't sell through the website. I'm like, so if inquiries came through the website, you would be upset, right? So otherwise, how else are you going to measure the performance of the content, right? It has to, ideally, some of it is, of course, attribution, right? And some of it is literally to raise funds. And getting some of our clients to accept that. Now, if they don't want to go there, you can't force them there, right? Like if their whole thing is brand building, but their competitors are doing it. And when you start to point that out, that, hey, this content is literally specifically geared for demand generation. And now that being said, it's not retail written, right? It doesn't keep going, call today or anything like that. But I along the same lines, when you take content and the purpose of it is for demand generation, so many institutional firms don't ask for the sale, right? They're not, if your objective is to get top of funnel leads or prospects, right? A simple sign up for the newsletter. Or if you're writing a piece of content, if you then say, and here's a link to a related product or related service, not just at the bottom, but maybe in the middle, right? Then that is showing that can easily show results. That builds results. And when we take clients to sites like McKinsey, right, who are supposed to be above all that, and you see in the middle of a very long piece that it says sign up for the newsletter or sign up for a conversation with the consultant or the department or the group, they go, oh, right, if McKinsey can do it, then maybe we should too. And they don't realize how much retail tactics have penetrated the institutional world. It's just you're doing it catered to the audience that you're speaking to, right? You're not doing 6 pop-ups on a site. You're not doing splashy things, but tactics are the same. It's just how you execute them that makes the difference.
So Shane, moving forward, do you see more down funnel activity on our content marketing than we perhaps currently do?
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
It is going to happen. The more you rely on AI, the more you rely on automation and sales and other pieces, you're seeing bigger and bigger pieces of product being sold digitally online. So I think if you are running, and we have a number of alternative investment platforms as clients, that is a pure digital investment sale for the most part, right? Like you can literally go in, you have a consolidated K1 You could totally just sign up and put 5 million into a new sleeve and do it purely digitally. Now, it doesn't happen, right, that way, but you are starting the process. And at some point, if that becomes an algorithm and there's another algorithm literally on the other end of a platform, and it's basically building a cart of platform items in the end, right? The sales process is going to become less involved, and it's going to be content that's really generating the interest. And then how do you bubble up inside a platform even?
Yeah. Shane,
Yeah.
very relevant. And thank you so much. And somebody, yeah, Anthony, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to build quickly on what Shane was saying in terms of that the sales piece of it, because I mean, you asked earlier, Bill, what changed from COVID? And
Yeah.
when you asked the question, I thought, how much did stuff really change that much? But I think one thing that definitely changed that we've seen a lot and we've seen our clients talk about a lot is that the sales process changed. And there was this model, especially I'm speaking mostly in terms of the investment industry, but it's true of banking as well, that relied on the idea of salespeople going out and calling on prospects, calling on clients. And COVID really disrupted that. But what that means from a content marketing perspective is exactly along the lines of what Shane was talking about in terms of really being aware that your clients are not they're not waiting for that call from a salesperson to make a decision. They are evaluating, they're looking at things, they're researching, they're exploring that in ways that you might not be aware of. So you need to think about what that model is, what that decision-making process is, and prepare yourself and deliver things to align with that decision-making process so that even in the absence of sales interaction, that person is moving down the funnel in the direction that you want them to go in.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you so much for that. Listen, now I'm going to shift gears a little bit here to get on to some other subjects. There's so much to talk about, which is an exciting aspect of it. I also have a question or two that I will get to in a moment. But before I do, I want to ask, let me move on to you, Kate, with it. No, yeah, Kate, and then I'll move to you, Eamonn, on this, but about staffing needs. Now, as content marketing has become much more prolific in financial services, I want to talk to you just about your impression about what the staffing needs are from an agency point of view and on the marketer side as well. How significant are they, and how are financial firms and agencies meeting those expectations of how staffs need to behave and interact?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the implications for staffing are pretty significant. And first and foremost, it's around the volume of content that we're creating and the types of channels that we're trying to put content down into. I think that ultimately we need to figure out and help our clients figure out how to break down some of those silos that exist, especially in some of these larger legacy organizations, to allow for some greater efficiencies to happen. And so we're really helping a lot of our clients right now really reimagine how they deliver work, designing new organizational models and processes using the right technologies to help them really enable the delivery of that personalized customer experience at scale. And so we're thinking about different ways for their teams, right? So the experts, those portfolio managers, those product managers, getting together with marketing, getting together with the agency in new ways that just really allows us to greatly expand the amount of content that we're putting out there. And of course, I would be remiss in this answer if I wasn't including mention of AI and the way that we're using some of those tools as well.
Kate, thank you so much. And of course, we have a whole chapter of our conversation devoted to AI, and we'll get into that in a second. But thank you for bringing that up and pointing that out. Eamonn, I'd like you to respond to the same question, if you don't mind, about staffing, not only on your agency side, but also how you might guide your clients in terms of how they staff. Go ahead.
Well, I say, for some of our, clients, I would say you need a journalist on board really in your organization to sniff out those sort of stories that will cut out, through to the general market. And I think it's, working with a journalist who's got can, you know, smell out a good story that will stick with people. And a lot of the time it comes from the sales guys as well, who are talking to clients, you know. And I know, to follow up on, you know, Shane and Anthony, you know, nothing happens in business without a sale at the end of the day. So in fact, the head of a large asset manager told me that one of the most effective things she had was webinars, because she could say, here are the registrants, here are the questions they asked, go and talk to the, you know, give us the sales guys and say, go call those guys, you know. So that's an opportunity. And let's face it, a lot of content for the last 2 years for us, particularly, has just been client retention, you know. So, you know, we've still got a head, you know, steady hand on the tiller, you know, we're all going to be okay at the end of the day. So there's lots of that sort of messaging. And, but I think, you know, having a good journalist who can sort of, you know, come up with good content to get people to register for that webinar. And also it takes time to build up an audience as well, because, you know, you look at any TV show, it takes a while to build up a following for a TV series. Similar way, if you do, you know, a lot of people do these webinars and they'll forget about them, you know, but I think if you have one on a regular basis and it's good content, you can build up an audience. In fact, one of our most successful pieces is actually a piece we've been doing for about 6 years with one of our clients. It's a quarterly update, but it's a very short 5-minute, 6-minute piece, but it's what's happening in the world. And then they have an opinion, and here tell them exactly what they're doing with their portfolios.
Yeah.
So, but people love it because it's a very short 5 minutes of their time. They get what's happening in the world, and they get, okay, I've got a steady hand on the tiller. My discretionary portfolio is fine, you know. So that's but it takes time to build up that, people to know that personality, etc. You know.
And do your clients, for the most part, do they understand this in the necessary investment in the regularity of a content marketing program? You know, are they ramping up? Are they hiring an editor?
Yeah. I think that the better ones are. I think, you know, a lot of marketing teams are not held accountable for their spend, you know, that much, you know. And I think with some good statistics, like, say, for example, a quarterly update that's, you know, gets commented on. And, you know, I know this particular piece we do, it's, you know, people see the presenter and they say, oh, I saw your update, it's brilliant, you know. And it's an opportunity for the relationship managers as well to distribute that content.
Yeah.
You know, and we produce it like a TV show. It's very quick, turned around in a few days. So it's timeliness as well. I mean, you never compete with the large media organizations for news. So that's why just bland commentary on what's happening in the market is useless. You really have to have an opinion. You know, this is what's happening in the market, and this is what it means to you, you know. And if somebody's got, you know, 100,000 invested in your fund, they will listen to you, you know. So it's got to be relevant.
Yeah, it's great advice, you know, in that you just can't recite the facts, because the facts are presented in other media all the time by far more powerful organizations, right? But it's about the opinion, and that's, of course, why they're interested in.
What I say to my clients is, you know, somebody on the BBC, they don't have skin in the game. You do, you know.
Right.
Go talk about it.
Yeah, right. All right, listen, let's get to a question. We have a question from Ryan Stone, who's with Harding Loevner. Let me ask Lynda. I'll just sort of point to you at this moment. Forgive me for just sort of reading through this as I say it. What are some of those KPIs you look at to prove ROI? Now, yeah, let me sort of leave it at that right now. And Lynda, I'll ask you, then I'll move over to Kate with that, if I may.
So I think it goes to KPIs per content themselves, the pieces of content. So taking a look at, could be KPIs like downloadable forms, click-through rates, engagement, likes, shares, website traffic, page traffic, LinkedIn engagement if you're on LinkedIn. If you're thinking about podcasts, it's plays, starts, everything and how it works together. So you're taking a look at the individual channels, individual pieces, and seeing actually how that's all working together, and then laddering it up to a bigger report. So that's something that we're working on with our clients right now, specifically one, because there are a couple of things that's really important to this. So you have the KPIs, and then your per channel, per tactic, and then laddering it up, and then laddering it up even more to see how it's fitting with the business goals. So to do that, then you have to enable all of these things to happen and make sure everything is properly instrumented. So Kate was talking about legacy. So modernizing legacy is a really, really big thing, especially in the financial services, as we're all aware, and depending on the size of the firm. they're at a different level of maturity. And I think, Kate, you were talking about that, and 100% agree. Eamonn, you were talking about the accountability for their spends. And some aren't really accountable for that, but actually the clients that we're working with, they definitely are accountable, and having to show that to leadership. If they don't have the ability or the background to articulate that, they lose their budgets. We're going into 2025, so making sure that the organization or leadership really understands the value and complexity of marketing, but not making it overly complex, just to make sure you have a business case and you're managing expectations, so you can actually show your results month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, but taking those steps to give them, visibility into all that and see how it's performing. So I think that answers the question in terms of some of the KPIs, but there are different levels of KPIs and measurements that ladder up over time to actually show how you can make that leap. When I worked at a larger enterprise, the other part is working with your financial department to see actually how you can kind of link the two together in terms of company performance.
Yeah, Lynda, thank you so much for that. Let me ask you, Kate, because the second half of this question was directed at you, if I may. And that let me read the whole question though, is what are some of the KPIs you look at to prove ROI? And Kate, you said to have those conversations in advance, but what are the things specifically that you look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of good stuff has been said about this already. We want to connect it specifically to the tactic and to the role of that tactic. And then all of the types of metrics that Lynda was talking about, traffic metrics, engagement metrics, conversion metrics. Those are absolutely the things we want to be tracking, and then laddering them up to the business goals. The only thing that I really have to add is when you have the reporting set up so that you are able to see those measures on a regular basis, you're able to look for areas of drop off or bottleneck and to more effectively kind of diagnose those in real time. And so one example could be if there is a drop off in leads when you're handing them from marketing to sales, seeing that a drop off is happening there, understanding what's happening in that moment can help both sales and marketing be more effective moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate, very much. Panel, let's move on to another big topic. I'll start with you, Shane, if I may. And this is on artificial intelligence. It's bubbled up already in our conversation, AI. I guess the best way to start this conversation is, what are the ways that AI is changing content marketing and perhaps will change what we do in content marketing? And that's a huge question, but give it your best shot if you would.
All right. We all know AI is generative and generates content, and of course we're seeing it in the in blog posts and standard content that we're producing for customers. I think you are of the next fastest area you're seeing of growth is where there are automated generated content from, say, performance results. That's kind of the next thing. You're seeing it a lot in all of the CRM tools and search tools and performance tools, right? It's basically reading the charts and the data to you and writing that out. So I do think at some point you're going to see a lot of fund performance and financial results being reported with AI. That's the next use case. So I think you get an idea of where content generation is going with AI. But I think the most interesting thing to watch right now is how is AI going to affect search and SEO in particular, because search is still such a one of the core ways of getting visibility, in addition to, of course, social. And I finally heard the replacement term for SEO, and there's two of them. I don't know which one it is, but I have heard LLMO, large language model optimization. And then I've heard, I think it's GCO, generative content optimization. So we'll see which one becomes the standard. But I'm already telling clients, you have to get found in AI results or AI reports. And I've done things such as show me, I'm this kind of investor and I'm looking for these kinds of investment funds, and give me 5 options. and why? And do you show up in those? So getting your name in those results in one way, and then from a content attribution standpoint, if AI has access to your content publicly, then how do you get attributed to those? I do think you're going to see a little more attribution than you're seeing now in ChatGPT. Perplexity does do better attribution, and then the Bing one does attribution as well. I'm guessing in the ChatGPT search engine, I guess, that they're releasing, there probably will be some, although they tend to seem to not want to. But visibility in those types of the AI algorithms, because that's also going to then serve inside smaller language models, whether they're inside platforms or inside other CRM tools or whatever it is. So everyone is using it to create content, but then be aware of what are the broader effects of AI on search, which on paid advertising, on all of these other, the amount of social content that's going to get created, which is going to make it harder to get exposure out there. So it's everyone is thinking about the tool as the tool, but in addition to that, we also need to think about the impact that it's having on our efforts as a whole.
Shane, thank you so much for that. That is, as I said, a huge question to begin with, and you answered it with great clarity, and I thank you, sir. Anthony, I'm going to ask you the same question in essence, which is, how is AI, and you can certainly build on anything Shane shared with us just then, and but I do want to ask you, how is it changing the way content marketing is done, performed, and how might it change it in the future, or will it change it? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, obviously it's an interesting question and something that all of us in this business are talking and thinking about. First part of my answer will build on what Shane said, because what he said started my thinking a bit, and realizing that yeah, what you're saying, Shane, is absolutely true. I think the other side of it, though, is that the more AI takes over traditional search platforms, the less you're going to be able to think in terms of the kind of old style distribution through SEM, SEO. You're going to need to adapt, and that probably means thinking more about other channels like social and email, and working those channels more, because you know that people are going to see your stuff and know it's from you. The other side of it, I guess, in terms of like broader impact of Gen AI on what we do, I'm not always accused of being a Luddite, but when it comes to AI, I remain a little bit of a skeptic, in the sense that it feels a little like something that's always going to be on the horizon. That being said, I think that there are some really interesting applications of it from a content marketing perspective, but understanding what those are and how they can apply to a client's business or to a marketing organization, not to sound like a broken record, but it really starts with understanding what your gaps are. Like, what is it that you really need, and how can AI solve that for you? One obvious one that we've thought a lot about is, or at least obvious, I think in terms of the need, is creating industry versions of things. That is, or segment, I guess a better way to put it would be segment specific versions of a kind of base piece of content. So, you build the base piece, and then you can kind of iterate that with the help of Gen AI, whether that's brainstorming and guiding you, or whether it's changing the writing itself, is, kind of, that's something that's it has to be determined. But I think that kind of thing is often a need for businesses, going back to your resource question, because they're resource constrained. So it's hard to have somebody who can write pieces that are for a dozen different industries, but it becomes a little bit more doable if you have somebody writing one thing and then you're iterating, you're versioning it.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you very much for that. Eamonn, I'm going to move to you with on the same line of question, but I'm going to ask you, how are especially in you're dealing with clients, how are financial firms ramping up, getting ready, preparing for the future as it relates to AI in content marketing?
Well, everybody's looking at this. And I mean, I know we did a presentation in New York there with some of the AI stuff we've been doing with avatars and personalization. By the way, Forbes has got some stats on social media stuff out, and they show personalization can improve engagement by 120 times, you know? So that's quite a huge amount if you can get AI to work on that. I think, yeah, as regarding clients, I mean, it's on everybody's agenda, but the problem is with particularly our clients in regulated industries, it's just like everybody's got these huge AI working groups, and there's compliance and legal, and it's just, you know, so I mean, I think financial firms are being pretty much ahead of the curve with tech in many ways, but I think on AI, they're going to be behind the curve because of this. And then just you know, being allowed to upload stuff into, you know, ChatGPT, for example, is almost impossible. I mean, we're doing a project on private markets at the moment, and we constructed a prompt to put into these LLMs, and I mean, we got something out of Perplexity that was just amazing. I mean, and just all the sources were there, and we found these reports on private markets and commentary and from all across the world. I mean, it's like being in this huge library with all the books in the world in front of you, but you just need to know the questions to ask, you know, you need to know what shelf to go to. So I think constructing the prompts is going to be key. And I think from creating content, it's just going to be an amazing tool in everybody agency's box, you know.
Yeah. Eamonn, thank you. Lynda, I know you know an awful lot about AI and its integration into financial services marketing. What's your take on this in terms of how your clients and those you're speaking with on the marketer side are ramping up and preparing for a future of AI and content marketing playing in the same sandbox?
So I think one of the biggest things, especially for those with a little bit more of the legacy infrastructures, is they're needing to, right, tighten up their and modernize their data structure. So that's a really key important piece here, especially when you're talking about personalization, but making sure that you start with the data and modernizing the infrastructure and what's there to support it. The other part is what companies like it was JP Morgan that had released, it was in the Financial Times. I'm looking at my screen because I wanted to talk about this today a little bit. Was they begun rolling out their generative artificial intelligence product internally, so they can actually do one of the talks I think I did last year at Gramercy was this move to where you can actually have a platform and you can leverage your own internal thought leadership to help generate additional pieces of content that's really specific to your company. One of the big things is when you're working on companies like an investment bank that has these amazing analysts and research subject matter experts, is how do you make sure you protect the IP and then make something and version it that's going to share your point of view, but you're still protecting that. And so that's where some of the bigger firms are even the mid-tier and smaller firms that are ahead of the curve on this are actually working to put that together so they can have it internally, it's protected, and you're not using the perplexities or the ChatGPTs in an open environment because you want to make sure you're really, really careful there. The other part is in talking from a content perspective, we're working with a company right now to build our own capabilities to talk about anticipating narratives that could potentially go viral. So that's going to allow us to kind of identify some of those aspects for content writing, but then that helps clients because if you can identify that on the outside, right, that they don't have to, that doesn't have to be in a protected environment, but then take that in and then show them, you know, here are some things that, you know, from a predictive analytics perspective that potentially could go viral, then we could actually help guide some of the authoring of the content. So there's two sides of that, right? So then they can have the intelligence internally, additional intelligence internally to create their own, based on their own IP for their clients that's protected. And then you can actually leverage the capability that's in place if they have a content generation engine to actually version that, and then that helps scale. So then you're not working as hard because that actually impacts budgets and resources and return on investment.
Lynda, thank you so much. I have time for one more question, and let me point it to you, Kate, if I may. It's a simple question, but are there any examples that stand out, either that have been handled by your own agency or perhaps another, regarding financial firms in terms of their content marketing endeavors that sort of stand out that you could describe in a brief moment, and why that appeals to you or why you think it's particularly noteworthy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, what we hear time again in our research is really BlackRock continues to be looked to as the forerunner due to their really heavy investment in thought leadership content, helping their wide range of clients navigate and more deeply understand complex market conditions. I think what's really cool about BlackRock also is their ability to have a clear point of view that spans all of their audiences. So frequently we see firms or larger institutions kind of changing their brand a little bit when they speak to each of their different audiences. And that consistency, we believe, is really key across audiences. And that's something that BlackRock does really well. They're not a client of ours. We just like their work.
Not yet. What a great answer. And thank you. I know, and as soon as you said them, they in their, the broadness, the breadth of their entire communications, there's a consistency. And it's really neat to see, and I would agree with that example. My friends, I have let us tick our time slightly over what I told you that I will. I won't let us leave until I do say thank you, though.